Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Patty Cassidy, Senior Consultant with Griffin Hammis Associates and your speaker for this topic. This is the fifth lecture in the ACRE web-based certificate course in community employment with a concentration in customized employment. In this lecture, you will learn about the importance of job site training and support strategies that are so important in various stages of employment for people with significant disabilities. This lecture will provide you with additional information to what you've learned through the Relias class and your readings. The content of this lesson is based on the work of numerous people and organizations, and in particular the work of our colleagues at Griffin Hammis Associates, Ellen Condon of the Rural Institute at the University of Montana, Mike Callahan and the work of Mark Gold at Mark Gold and Associates, the Rehabilitation Research and Training Center at Virginia Commonwealth University, Dr. Lou Brown at the University of Wisconsin, and Teresa Grassi, Indiana Institute on Disability and Community. This lecture will help you to understand and explain the importance of the negotiation of job duties and how that negotiation forms the foundation of the job analysis for the new employee. We will cover the use of the job analysis to prepare written training and fading plans to ensure the new employee's success. Finally, you'll be able to describe some simple job site support strategies that call upon the content you've learned in this lesson from the Relias class and your readings. As you learned in the previous webinars, there are 4 phases of customized employment. Number 1 is the discovering personal genius process. Number 2 is cultivating employment opportunities or job development. Number 3 is engaging employment supports. And number 4 is ongoing support and career development. The components of this lecture will cover the last 2 phases, number 3, engaging employment supports, and number 4, ongoing support and career development. Training and supports are used from the start of a job and in an ongoing way to ensure long-term success and career mobility and advancement. Our training and support of job seekers doesn't begin on the first day of work. It actually starts during discovery when we first meet the job seeker. In discovery, we learned not only what a job seeker's interests are and the skills and tasks they have and know how to do, but we also learned about how a job seeker learns best and what strategies have been employed to help him or her learn new things. We learned about existing support strategies that are currently used to help the individual in their daily life, and we explored any technologies an individual may currently employ, or explored any new technologies that might be valuable to them in the future related to their work. We captured the personal attributes that help us explain more clearly what the individual's needs are, preferred work conditions, work culture, just everything necessary for successful employment. And we compared the individual's current skills and tasks and those they can learn, along with their support needs to see how a job fits the individual. Then we say it's a good match when the ideal conditions of employment are met. But that doesn't mean that the individual will not need training and support. They will still probably have some help to learn their new job, or might need other supports to help with social interactions or how to handle requests for time off, maybe help to take breaks and lunch on time, or help in learning to ride the bus, any number of issues that may be seen presently or that may come up in the future. I think we need to stop and have some guiding principles to our work. Let's review. These principles are critical components to effectively supporting people at work. Critical to ensuring that people hold valued social roles and are seen as successful in the contributions they make to their workplace or to their business. They're critical to learning how to best support a person in their work in the ways that they want to be supported. So first and foremost, we do not allow people to appear incompetent. We plan ahead for all aspects of work, from dressing appropriately, food for snacks and lunch, performance of job tasks, and plan for the assistance individuals will need to be successful. We must respect the dignity and the reputation of the people we support and ensure that they are viewed in the most positive way. We remain focused on the contributions each person makes to their employment. We seek abundance. We must have a view that everything that is needed for success is available, and we will seek to find it. It is this positive and open approach to life that creates the environment for success. This open approach to life is one of the ODEP customized employment competencies that was in your readings for lesson number 1. We seek adventure. We do not become overcautious because of our fears, but we take precautions and we ensure that the risks are manageable and do not let them prevent us from supporting people in their chosen work. We write it down. Our work is important, and we do not just show up. We record information that helps document job duties, the tasks, the methods of instruction, the important people at work we need to know. We write down all the many, many things that are important about an employee's work. Not just because our funders require it, but because it's important. It's important to plan. It's important to help support a plan. And it's important to share information, to communicate with the employer. And you know what? It's important not only to the new employee's success, but to our success. And lastly, we focus on contribution. The contribution that the new employee makes to his or her work or to their business. We don't focus on disability or perceived problems or on making things easier by picking the easiest tasks or just letting things happen and see how things work out, kind of the place and pray model of employment. We stay focused on work and we believe in and express the contributions the job seeker makes to their job. Now, with these principles in mind, let's get started. So, you've heard me mention this already. Our biggest mistake is not planning. We either rush into things or think the work is so simple that we can just show up and manage it. But when things go wrong, and things do go wrong, it's much better to have a method and a plan in place from which we can make adjustments if needed than to try to solve a problem without enough information and a plan. It's just much easier. So we need to have a strategy in place, a job analysis, a task analysis written, a training and support and fading plan, and have identified all the people who will be the trainer and how that training is going to proceed. We've already covered much of the job analysis process and documentation in the previous lesson, when during the job development stage we ask about and possibly observe job duties, tasks, work-related routines, and other information when we're trying to customize a job for someone. It's just part of good customized employment development. Those critical pieces that we captured earlier in the job development process now must be fine-tuned, if you will. Once we negotiate the duties, we again must be assured that we all understand what the job and the duties will entail, who will teach, what role will play, and how the culture of the workplace fits, all the parts that we must now plan for before the employee's first day on the job. We're not starting over with the job analysis, because we must revise the job analysis from the one we completed during job development, and this time to only reflect the duties and the tasks and the work-related tasks that we negotiated on behalf of the employee. So it's a revision. Or in the case of self-employment, which tasks the business owner will complete, which tasks might need more instruction, and which will be completed by others. We need to observe the tasks that were negotiated again, and this time, let's look at the ways the tasks are performed. What's important or troublesome? Where does accuracy matter or not? What are some of the finer pieces of the tasks that you didn't catch the first time? Have someone teach you the tasks. It's important to know how a task is to be performed and also helps to know who would be the best teacher. It's always best to have the typical trainer teach the new employee, just as any new employee might be taught, and don't just assume that you will be the job coach and do the teaching. I've heard the following many times from employment specialists, job developers, and job coaches. I don't have time to do all those task analyses. I will just be there on the first day and I'll just figure it out from there. Or, our funders don't pay us to do that kind of in-depth analysis and job development. Only while we're at the job site coaching. Or, the employer will think it's weird if I ask to be taught the tasks and the job seeker will do and write everything down. So how often does a job coach just show up and teach without really knowing the details of the job duties and just expect to learn along with a new employee and step in and prompt when necessary? Well, I'm afraid that we see that pretty often. Ensure you have a job analysis that reflects the negotiated duties, and write a more detailed task analysis when necessary, only when necessary. Identify any assistive technology you think might be helpful or appropriate that matches the specific needs of the job seeker. Not everyone needs assistive technology, but if someone currently needs and uses it, or adaptations, think about their use on the job. And lastly, review the content of your job analysis with the business owner or the manager or the natural trainer for any refinement or alterations and permissions before the first day of work. Be sure to note the work routines and job tasks and understand their frequency. When a task is done repeatedly throughout the day, there is more opportunity for work trials and for the task could be then more easily learned. But if a task is only performed, say, once every day or maybe once every week, the chance for that repetition and to learn the task is diminished. You all have learned these components in your Relias course and in the last lesson when approaching job development and consideration for a good job match. These are all critical to being prepared for the teaching and support for the new employee. So the core routines, those are those everyday repetitive tasks. Not all jobs have a simple core routines. Episodic routines. These are tasks that are done every once in a while, like changing out a printer cartridge or completing a mileage or an expense report. And there's some work-related activities that we need to be aware of, like clocking in, packing a lunch, choosing appropriate clothing or dress to wear for work, and making transportation arrangements, those kinds of things. And then lastly, the culture of the company, as in this picture, the humor of a workplace, the celebrations, the after-work gatherings, the looking busy when the boss comes in, but relaxing when the boss is not. And we often miss these important indications because we may not have questioned this, or we may not have spent enough time in the company prior to the first day of work. Or maybe some of the culture indicators will not be seen and understood until later. And that's just equally important to supporting an employee, since the supports and training are ongoing throughout the customized employment process. So when completing your job analysis in preparation for the new employee's first day on the job, don't just robotically write down what you see. The idea is to interpret the environment and the supports that are available, whether there are natural cues that help a person move from one task to another, or for example, an alarm goes off when a truck enters the loading dock, which tells the employee to stop stocking and go to the docks to prepare to unload a shipment. Or maybe you notice that there's a coworker that sits near the supply room and might be enlisted to help check out the stockroom key, or the key to the stockroom, and help make sure it's returned, which has been a problem that's arisen with the employee. There's always natural cues that can be observed and can be helpful to the job. One of the preeminent skills of a good job developer is developing those natural supports, which can be coworkers, but then also to figure out how that could work in an effective way. Look for those intersecting tasks where there's an opportunity for coworkers to perform a task together. You may have found tasks like this in a job analysis and have included those tasks in your negotiations for the job. This creates an opportunity where your presence may not be needed, and you can actually start to fade your presence and support. Remember that term intersecting tasks on your pre-test? Well, it's also going to be on your post-test. So remember, intersecting tasks, an opportunity for coworkers to perform a task together. Use the JAR, J-A-R, which is the job analysis record, which is part of your materials for this lesson, or some similar documentation to record the job and job-related tasks. They're called projects in the job analysis record. You may want to break down the tasks into smaller steps if necessary, to ensure that you understand the complexity of the tasks and how the tasks might be taught. Sometimes we can go overboard on writing a task analysis. It is designed as a tool where you need to break something down into smaller steps to help with teaching when larger steps are too difficult to learn. How specific you need to get is based on the new employee and the learner. If the person has it down, you don't need to do a task analysis. Not all tasks are as important as others. Sometimes we can instruct and we mess around with the culture or overemphasize, what's important to the business. For an example, at a goat farm creamery, they are really, really concerned about making sure they have sterile machines. They're not so concerned about the exact amount of hay that goes into their goats. It's important to recognize, and these things that you can pick up in a job analysis or task analysis and record them. We can get caught in an analysis paralysis, and I don't intend that this is something that will absorb your time and become more complex to you than the interface with the coworkers. Just don't let this happen to you. Use the analysis when necessary. So in facilitating worksite support in preparation for day one, generally with good planning, you have clear expectations about everyone's roles. The supervisor, the person responsible for training coworkers, the new employee, you, the employment specialist, and you have these expectations clearly defined for the first day and possibly for the first week of employment. This is clarified with all the parties and forms the basis for that training and support plan. They are documents that are required, could be documents that are required by your state, or even can be a version developed at your own agency. It spells out who will be responsible for training, the new employee, and the methods and the means that will be used initially and how everyone will communicate. It includes how the employment specialist role will change over time and how ultimately your role is to support and fade from ongoing presence on the job to removing yourself from that ongoing presence. Some plans describe how fading will happen and what data will be taken to ensure that the fading of the employment specialist happens appropriately and it's just not based on an arbitrary timeline. So after we've done that day one, we start to look at what happens from day one to week one. Sometimes we need to reassess things after that first week. Remember, we only created a plan, and a plan is not set in stone and needs to be altered as new information is learned. We need to re-clarify roles when it's warranted. Someone else may need to step in to train, or the employment specialist might be asked to provide some direct coaching where the natural means and the natural ways have not been effective. If the employer decides to rearrange the employee's work tasks or the work schedule needs to be changed, you should review, modify, and ensure that good communication occurs between the employer and the employee. Discuss the performance and expectations with clarity and with integrity. Adjustments to those training strategies or worksite modifications can be developed with both the employee and the business in mind. And with good communication, we set the stage for collaboration and meaningful problem solving when difficulties do arise. You have already covered in detail the components and application of systematic instruction in your Relias class and in your readings. We will not go over those concepts again in this lecture. In customized employment, we do not only seek jobs and tasks that people already know how to do, but also consider tasks that a job seeker can learn to do. In other words, we seek abundance and help negotiate those tasks where the new employee can learn new things within their capabilities and where they can learn new marketable skills. For decades, the use of systematic instruction strategies have demonstrated that even people with the most significant cognitive disabilities can learn very complex tasks and can perform well when given proper instruction. When people have the skills for more complex tasks, they can earn better wages and have more job security. Think about some of the very simple work tasks that are often sought for people with cognitive disabilities, where we think people require repetitive, boring tasks. For me, silverware rolling comes to mind. Too often, that simple task, silverware rolling, becomes a job for someone. That's it, just silverware rolling for a couple of hours, no other job duties. The job may have been sought because someone heard about a job like that for someone else. So, hey, let's see if we can get a job like that for you. It probably did not come from discovery, and it probably didn't follow an individual's vocational themes. And maybe if the employment specialist was skilled in good systematic instructional strategies, he or she might have sought more fulfilling and challenging job duties during job development and negotiation. And in the case of the silverware roller, when business is slow or cutbacks happen, who do you think will get laid off first? As an employment specialist, we often have to train someone to do a task that we are not familiar with. Or in the case of a typical trainer is not being successful with the natural ways and means of training a task, they may ask for our consultation or guidance to alter the training strategies. And this is why it's so important to observe the tasks being performed successfully by someone who knows how to do it. Have the trainer teach you the task. Perform the task yourself to understand the task and its complexity. And write out the steps of the task so that you have a task analysis to teach from, should you need it. So part of this course is, all of this course is online, but part of our other courses that are in person, we do some practices of systematic instruction exercise. So I just like to suggest for you to try this practice exercise at the conclusion of this lecture. What I suggest is you have someone teach you a task that you are unfamiliar with, and one that you have not done before, and that you have the opportunity to practice it several times. You can also look up an instructional video on YouTube where someone can teach the steps of a task. Here's some tasks that you might consider to have someone teach you. Something like making homemade tortillas, sewing on a button, a card trick, tying a fly for fly fishing, crocheting a washcloth. And from YouTube, here are two that I use frequently and find pretty funny and enjoyable. Look up how to make Scotch eggs. And a second one is how to fold a t-shirt in 3 seconds. And so just think about this. Take some time. Figure out a task that you've not done before, and as you're learning the task, write down a task analysis of the steps that you're being taught. Using your own task analysis, practice the task until you are competently performing the task and feel that maybe you could teach someone else how to complete it. So, were the steps in your task analysis helpful to you in learning the task? And figure out, did you need to alter the steps? Think about whether you needed to break them down further into smaller steps. If the person was teaching you, what could they have done differently? How could they have taught you differently to help you learn better? Did they consider how you learn best? Then, using that systematic instruction strategies that you learned from your Relias course and your readings, teach someone else the task that you just learned. How effective are you when teaching a task that you only just learned? How effective would you have been teaching the task if you had not learned it yourself at all? Take the opportunity to practice the skills learned in this lesson so that you're not practicing on someone on their job. We need to not practice on people's jobs. We need to be skilled by creating some opportunities to practice your systematic instructional strategies before you're called out to consult or to offer advice or to provide training. Really helps you in your instructional strategies. I hope you give that a try. So facilitating a worksite support requires us to take on a different role. So when you take on a consultative role at a job site, remember that you must support both the trainer and the trainee. That you need to fit in. You need to dress similarly to the people at the work site. Take breaks when other people are taking breaks, and you are not the person that takes the break with the new employee. The new employee takes breaks with his or her coworkers. Keep your cell phone turned off. If you are the one providing the training and coaching, if that happens to be the case, you need to design and perform the tasks as closely to the business norm as possible. Don't change things up unless you have to, unless you have agreed to that possibility. use or support the use of systematic instruction, and be sure to minimize rewards and verbals. You've learned that through this instructional process with systematic instruction, that we don't do a lot of talking, so be cautious with that. And lastly, remember, you are not the supervisor, and so always make sure that your role is one of a consultative nature, and to reduce your intrusion at the work site. So let's talk about that job coach model, or a natural supports and consultative role model. I mean, I think things have changed since the early days of supported employment. From that job coach presence at the job from day one. Back then the word was, we guarantee the job will be done from day one. I think we were meaning that the job coach would be present to ensure all duties would be completed from the very first day, because the job coach would actually step in to complete tasks when the new employee was still learning. This set up all sorts of odd expectations, and not the least of which is that the new employees became dependent on the job coach, and we began to interfere with the relationships with coworkers and supervisors. Boy, it's sure good that we've evolved from this model, right? We have, haven't we? So this natural and ongoing supports has several evolving features. As we've learned over the many years, a strict job coaching practice was not getting the success that we once thought. The changes in supports have evolved, and we better understand about what is natural about natural supports at work. Changing our focus from only training the new employee to consulting, advising, and mentoring of supervisors and coworkers to do the training and support has yielded much better results. We see better social interactions and working relationships between coworkers with and without disabilities, less reliance on the job coach to provide hands-on support to the employee, and employment staff have increased their skills to be better consultants to enable businesses to do the training and support of their own employees with significant disabilities. So employment specialists need a variety of skills to be a good consultant. They need to be competent in defining and clarifying the roles for both the natural, typical people at work who help and support the employee, and also themselves. They need excellent problem-solving and communication skills, and they are critical. The same goes for supports required outside of work, like transportation, laundering of uniforms, banking, counseling and medical appointments. Any supports necessary for work success need to be considered. And the employment specialist cannot provide every support. That's why that gathering of a customized support team early in the process of discovery is so critical. Self-management strategies have enabled individuals to succeed without an over-reliance on coworkers or on an employment specialist. Social stories, along with other behavior support strategies, have helped people with autism manage difficult social situations and communications at work. Some individuals have been successfully supported at work by motivational interviewing strategies and techniques through counseling sessions outside of work. The support of other people is only one means to support employment success. Consider assistive technology, both low-tech and high-tech. For example, written checklists, low-tech, or an iPad and a special app to manage a work schedule, high-tech. Or puff paint on equipment to help identify switches, low-tech. Or a specialized jig to help build a woodcraft item, as you see in this image on the slide of Stephen building a wishing well, a wooden wishing well, woodcraft item. That's more high-tech. Supports on the job are an ongoing feature of customized employment, just like in supported employment, and help an individual to maintain their job, but are also our considerations for advancement at work or a career change. So these additional skills and competencies for employment specialists are beyond the scope of this basic ACRE course in community employment, but are very necessary skills for employment specialists and for good quality customized employment services. Please consider your ongoing professional development and how you will obtain additional training to add to your skill set. When we consider other support strategies besides just job coaching, we see the need for natural and typical work relationships. Outcomes are less reliance on paid supports like a job coach and result in more satisfying natural relationships with coworkers and supervisors in the workplace. You know, all people, regardless of disabilities, need supports in order to be successful. It's not that unusual. The other thing is natural supports don't always evolve naturally. We sometimes have to help create an opportunity and bridge the difference between two people and to request help. We have to remember that the dignity, the respect, the individual's reputation, and self-determination are all our touchstones in the process of building those supports. We also need to realize that our work supports should not inhibit those natural supports. So, observing the natural supports found in the environment and use them. Things like coworkers assisting one another with tasks. Call upon that as you identify what exists. Connect the new worker to the coworkers and not yourself. Make sure that you are calling the person their employee, not a supported employment employee, or calling them a job seeker. They're a coworker. So connect people to their coworkers and make sure that you remove yourself from those relationships as quickly as possible. Within reason, ask for coworker advice and assistance in training and understanding routines. Just making sure that you're getting advice to reflect back to the natural trainer and to facilitate those relationships. Think about things that have to do with going to the break times. What about how long people can be on break? What about the speed? Is the person maintaining their production? What about quality? What kinds of ideas can you garner from coworkers and get advice? So remember too that natural supports don't always occur naturally. And we talked about that just a few minutes ago. The supports we may ask these folks to help with may also not be something that a coworker does naturally for others. So consider some of these factors when approaching someone for help. Does this person, the coworker or the person within the work site, does he or she know the job of the new employee well? Are they liked and respected at the workplace? Is this someone that has good social capital and has the respect of everyone else? That would make a much better coworker support if the individual is respected. Do they have the skills to facilitate social relationships? Do you see them interacting with people at work? Do you see them being sought out for their advice? Are they likely to remain on the job for at least 6 months? Are they people that have been there for a while? Or are they people that are just as new to the job? How about the work schedule? Does that new person or that individual's work schedule line up with the new employee's schedule? Sometimes individuals have part-time hours. The individuals we might have assisted in supporting on the job, we might have negotiated part-time hours, and their break schedules and their times don't line up. So we need to find people that are going to be present and available. Obviously, are they willing to take on the responsibility that you're considering, that you're being ready to ask for? It might be as simple as helping the person know when to come back from a break. They maybe are unable to respond well to cues and don't return from break time well. So it could be something as simple as that, as well as asking someone to review the quality of someone's work, which would require so much more in-depth involvement. So, and there might also be a need for more than one mentor. Maybe there are different things that are going on and for different reasons. Somebody might need help with the particular job skills and tasks they do, where someone else might need help in maybe maintaining good relationships or communicating with people. So just consider those factors. So let's take a few minutes and see if we can apply some of the concepts that you have learned through your readings and through the Relias course to some workplace scenarios. So I'm going to give you a couple of them first, and then we'll go through others where you might come up with some solutions. So Josh forgets to close the bathroom door at work. I would know that some people might want to see, how are we going to teach Josh to close the door? How will we ensure that Josh closes the door? When a very low-tech solution could just simply be to install a spring on the bathroom door. It would also probably help other people at the work site. Jennifer has a job where she is using a small bandsaw, and often that bandsaw will break, probably does for everyone else too. But when that happens to her, she gets upset, she yells and cries, and there are a couple of things that could be done. Think about multiple solutions that you might want to propose to or work around or work with coworkers. Some multiple solutions, and pick the one that you think might work best. So number one, you could reteach her the task, so maybe she doesn't break the blades as often. You could teach her to replace the blade herself, or you could teach her to ask for help from a coworker. Give her a positive solution to the crying and the yelling, to give her an approach to getting some support when she needs it. Ed quits working when his assembly parts run out. He just sees an empty bin, so he stops. So a solution could possibly be making his first task of the day and his first task right after lunch to fill his parts bin for his workstation. Just a simple solution to fitting that need. So let's look at a couple of others. Mary is having difficulty remembering the sequence of her job duties. So here's several solutions. She may have multiple different things that she does during the day, but she doesn't remember when to stop one and when to start the next. She could have a coworker who offers to check in at specific times during the day to remind her. She could have supervisors and coworkers and the employment consultant all develop an online prompting system using the company computer program that all the employees use. In this case, there was a woman who worked in a dental laboratory, actually an orthodontist office, and she needed to know when to move to the next task, and it would actually come up as a prompt on her computer that would be generated by her coworkers. It also use a pre-recorded prompting system on an iPad of his own voice. Could be somewhere where an individual would have be able to record that, and when touch the screen, when she gets stuck, her own voice would come up on the screen, or the prompt would come up on the screen, and her own voice would be telling her the next step. So let's try another one here. Luis is responsible for stocking the supply room inventory. He often finishes stocking a product and then he stops and he doesn't remember what to do next. His speech is a little difficult to understand, so when he tries to ask for help, he gets very frustrated. What are some possible solutions? I know your brains are thinking and thinking. Here's a couple. He might have an iPad or a phone that has an app that would be something that would prompt him to the next step, or have him search through all the items, images or pictures of the items that he's stocking, and then as he completes one product, he can click a button and then the next product pops up. He could have a checklist, a printed written checklist. It's a couple of solutions. Not difficult, does not require prompt dependence on an employment specialist, and it does not require prompt dependence on a coworker. Let's try another one. In this case, Sharon, who works in a bakery, usually works in the back alongside coworkers, and she makes baked goods. But occasionally she brings the products out up to the front of the retail area of the store, where she approaches customers and says, "Who are you? And are you married? and hey, do you like Elvis? And it makes some of the customers a little uncomfortable. So what are some possible solutions that you might come up with given some of the things you've learned? I know you're thinking. Give it some thought. Here's a couple that I came up with. I like that intersecting tasks. You remember that shared responsibility? So maybe in this case, this intersecting task could be that two workers go to the front so that a coworker is with her and can interrupt those inappropriate questions and to guide her back to the back. Or even consider changing out that task. Does she have to be the one to bring the items up to the front of the store? Could simply be a task that could be changed out. So, self-support, self-management, skills that might support individuals on the job that foster autonomy are also very, very important. Realizing that for 91% of the people, that the reason why people leave their positions are due to poor human interactions and social situations. So in order to understand the self-support and self-management strategies, we need to think about teaching and supporting these critical elements. What needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and the criteria for success, and what needs to be done next. So all of those ideas that we just thought of previously, which were those concerns around the scenarios that we had, those all brought into those things about how we made those decisions and why we make those decisions are around those concerns of what the task was, how we can problem solve it, how it needs to be done, what's criteria for success. So considering all those things that we've accomplished today, I encourage you to complete the task. It's not an assignment, it's not something you have to turn in, but complete the assignment of being taught some task you've never done, and take the time and opportunity to practice it, write the task analysis, practice it, and try to teach someone else that new task. Maybe at some point you can just shoot me an email and let me know what you've learned. Thank you all, and for any additional information, please visit us at griffinhamas.com, and we will see you next time. Thank you.